Hey, Maria. Hi, Colin. How are you?
Hi there.
Hello.
Okay, we'll start with a roll call. Chris, would you
Yep.
mind doing the roll?
Deanna Carlson. Bob Lavieri,
Here?
Michael Chen. Absent.
Not here.
Chris Labrise is here. Victor Alvarez.
Here.
Maria Weingarten.
Here.
Robert Hamill.
Here.
Colin Dobbin.
Here.
James Yao. Nicholas Petrakis.
Here.
Jan Schaefer.
Here.
Okay,
We have 8 and
so we need to seat for Michael. James the alternate. And we don't have another, we have Jan.
Jam.
Yeah, Jan.
Okay.
Okay,
A motion?
so moved.
Second? Victor, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none. Thank you. Okay, and I need a motion on the minutes. Any comments, edits, changes from the October 8th meeting? If not, need a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Second, Colin, all in favor? Aye, opposed, none? Okay,
Abstain.
fair enough. I'll get to that when I get there. So we've got, this is the update night. We've got updates coming in all kinds of directions from everywhere. And we're gonna start with Mike and Tiger on the ball field. I haven't been there in a couple of weeks. I saw some awfully huge piles of dirt. So we're looking forward to the update. How's it going?
So it's going quite well.
All of the nicest fall, and I've lived here all my life. Nicest fall, and
Exactly.
at this point, you're on borrowed time. It's the middle of November. It's gonna get cold.
They just started talking about a hurricane coming in, so one's forming in the Gulf. So we're doing very well. So to give you an update, we the contract from Atlantic Sports Group came in at $4,977,685. We had a $5 million budget, so 2 and 3. So excuse me, it was a Sourcewell contract, which is a consortium, a nationwide consortium. So it was actually a very, very tight bid. And they hit the ground running almost on day one from the time that the selectmen approved it. Mobilized. H.I. Stone is their primary subcontractor, and they're basically an earth moving company, because that's what you're seeing so far is a whole lot of dirt moving around. It was dry for a little while, had some dust problems, but we were able to work our way through it. Now it's getting a little bit wetter, and the humidity is coming up, so it's actually keeping the dust down. So if you've been out there, you can see that almost the entire footprint is starting to be leveled off. They've put in foundations for both dugouts, home and away, poured those. The brakes started coming back from the concrete testing, and they came back well. So that is a good thing. They started working on the drainage system in the perimeter of the field, and then in right field where the stormwater drainage system is going to go, as far as the detention system. And at that point in time, they'll continue to put the drainage in, the subsurface drainage, build up the surface, build up the structure, and then get it started ready for turf at that point in time. Their contract is stated to finish on April 1. First pitch is April 1. They haven't come back and said that they need any more time or anything like that. So that's where we're at present. We're still very early, but like I said, we've had a great first month and a half.
Great.
So we're hoping that the weather holds and holds through the winter. And if it does, we should be in very good shape.
We had a meeting a week ago, Monday. We have a weekly meeting generally that I attend, and I asked the only question I know how to ask, which is, are we on time and on budget? And they said, absolutely. I said, good. That's what I want to be able to report next Tuesday night.
How far through the project are we? I guess it's always how far through the project, how far through the budget are we?
Well, they haven't submitted anything for, an invoice yet, because we've only basically worked through a month so far from the start. So I can't tell you exactly where we are, because I don't have a metric as to what they're billing me for versus what they are on their schedule. And we'll get to that point when they're first.
Any hiccups, I guess, is the point. That's the
request for change orders.
I was gonna say, that's the question. I mean, whether
We've been able to so far work through issues in the field. Because there's always an issue in the field, something, but so far we've been able to work through those. And now we're working through material procurement as far as like, we're in the process now of selecting the turf colors and the design of the turf and how it's gonna look. We know exactly what the turf is going to be, the manufacturer. We just don't know exactly how the design is gonna play out. That and some other colors for your masonry, things of that nature that are all working through the shop drawing stage. And we haven't had any glitch there. The turnaround time has been very good by our consultants, by our landscape designer and our architect and our engineer. So they're all aware that we're on a tight time frame. So any turnaround time for shop drawings is very, very critical. So they've been moving those along as well to try to stay ahead so we can get everything here, ordered in here, so we don't have to wait for anything. We're a little bit better than, say, a building because we don't have these long lead items that we have to worry about. You know, where the majority of it is just structural items that you need to build for the dugout, what have you, and drainage pipe that's usually readily available. So in that regard, we haven't seen a material problem yet, and he hasn't spoken about one yet either. So
Questions?
Is Bill PMing this?
is Bill Osman?
Yeah.
No, Bill is not.
Who is?
That is myself.
You are?
Yeah.
So how many contractors? A landscape designer, architect?
I have a landscape designer, Richter and Segan is our lead landscape designer. We have McCord is our engineer of record. And then we have TLB is our architect. So each one has a representative and each one has come out and does their own site work as well. And then we have a site inspection group that we've hired to do concrete testing, soil testing, things of that nature, rebar review, all that.
Yeah. So there's nobody there who will provide you consolidated financials, right? You're gonna have to add it all up and
No, it's not like a Turner contract or
Yeah.
something like that. It's not structured that way. It's just a general contractor and then we're managing the project as it works forward. It's a little bit smaller than the Turner.
to get how far along are we total? How much have we spent in total?
Correct. Right. Those metrics are a little bit more difficult to put forward.
We'll do this again in February. We know we'll be in here almost twice a week and we'll get an update then. That'll be deep enough into it. You'll know what happened in December, January weather-wise. Obviously, April 1st will only be 6-7 weeks away and we'll get a good sense. And so we can get consolidated financials then for that at that point, probably.
That's fine. Okay with it?
Sounds great.
Like the police department, like everything we do. What did we find when we got started? That's usually sets those things off on one path or another. And I think it's been okay. So good. Okay.
What?
Colm, any questions or Maria?
Nope, not from this end.
No questions.
You good?
I'm fine.
I just have one question. What creates stop workage? Is it snow? Is it like, at what point are you not, you're gonna have to stop?
Well, snow is, it depends on how much and for how long and whether or not the subgrade at that point in time freezes or it doesn't. If we get to the point where a subgrade starts to freeze, then in essence, we can't start moving dirt around because it'll be clumpy and it will be very, very difficult to work with. So the temperature is going to drive the majority of it and then the moisture content associated with it for the work that's going on, because it's just basically a large field that we're trying to grade out. So that in essence would then, have them to kind of push time or then, delay. I won't call it delay because it's not a delay per se. It's just a question of can't work today because conditions aren't right.
Because April 1 it's still usually cold and
It can be.
miserable here.
That's correct.
So like laying the turf, you can do that in winter. Like, I don't know enough about that.
There are certain temperature requirements. Yeah, that's the only thing that we have to worry about is gluing the seams and things of that nature that we'll have to pay attention to as far as the temperatures at the time when they want to go and do that. And we feel that there are windows available for us to be able to get that done. It's a great question, though.
I have one question.
Yeah.
How's the fundraising coming along?
Fundraising coming along. The money's in the bank and
We see it's still advertising in the
yeah,
in
there's
the
still gonna be some
papers and-
support.
yeah.
That people were overly generous that they're gonna, they provided a bit of a bridge loan, so there'll be fundraising. But that was all to push to get the project on time. Slippage.
As I said, what you're doing now is backfill.
Correct.
Yeah,
Exactly.
okay.
Good, okay, well, thank you
Good,
both,
thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you. Hey, the Cinema Lab update, we are not going to have a Cinema Lab update today. We had a scheduling conflict, so I do need a motion to table the Cinema Labs update to December.
Motion.
Motion, Maria, second. Victor, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none? Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. And we'll get that update in December. All right, Bill. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Tucker, I can't, it says I can't share. My name is Bill Flynn. I'm the Executive Director of the New Canaan Nature Center.
See you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us again. You all enjoyed my presentation last year so much. I was invited every year to give an update. So here I am. So some years it'll be pretty quick and straightforward. And in the spirit of if wherever things are coming up on the Public Works budget, which is where the Nature Center projects live, that you'll hear from me and hear our uses. And then at least when it's a line item in the future, you have a backstory to it. So we all thought that was a pretty good idea. And I'm always willing to come back if there's more discussion. So we're good to go. I've got a presentation that will help guide this. So there'll be general sort of nature center updates, and then I'll go into some of the bigger building questions that we have coming up. So thanks for having me. So I always start with our governing documents here, just to remind everybody of why we exist on the Public Works budget. So the New Canaan Nature Center property and buildings were donated in 1959 by Susan Dwight Bliss, and she donated her house to the First Presbyterian Church in the surrounding areas. So that's where the church now presides. The rest of the 40 acres was donated to the town of New Canaan for purposes of an arboretum, nature center, bird sanctuary, passive recreation related purposes, or a museum site. And that is straight out of the deed. And 1960, 6 private citizens formed the New Canaan Nature Center Association, got together with the town, and the town made our nonprofit the designated agent to fulfill that deed. So that's pretty much the whole story of how we got here. We've been doing that since 1960. And thank you for continuing your trust with us. Everything laid out in that agreement is from a letter that was in 1960, which was all of 1 page. They expanded that to about 2.5 pages in 1970, but that is the living document that outlines our agreement. Pretty much it says that town of New Canaan, you own the property, you own the grounds. Our nonprofit decides what to do with that in spirit of fulfilling the deed. So that's why we're all here. As a brief reminder, once people start being shocked when I say that, I'll stop reminding everyone, but I always get someone who's like, is that how it's arranged? So I always remind everybody. Just in the last year, preschool and summer camp are our biggest programs. Mostly New Canaan residents, 86% on our preschool and 90% on our summer camp. We have one of the larger preschools in town. The 141 does include a caretaker and child program, so our Mommy and Me or Little Explorers. And summer camp, 711 campers. It's a big program. Our environmental education and community programs make up the rest of our programming. That is more of our outreach. We go to a lot of schools, but we also bring field trips in. So when the buses show up, that's what I'm talking about here. And we have over 5,000 students and kids who participate in that from all over the area, and we do programs out as well. And that's me making the syrup. That was my favorite thing I ever did. I don't get to do that anymore. Quick on the numbers. I did send out our annual report so I won't go over this in too much detail. We made a little bit more money than we spent last year, which is always good. Preschool, as you can see, is our biggest program. 44% of our revenues come from that preschool. If you add up all of our programming, it's about 70% programming and 30% from fundraisers and donations and grants and annual appeal. And as opposed to the expenses side, most of this is staffing, being our nonprofit, and caring for the property. That's where most of our bills go. And yeah, we every time that we end with somewhat of a positive, the board and our finance committee figures out what number that we're going to save for that and what projects we're going to do with that money. So I'll go through just a few of the things that we ended up doing last year. Along and as well as just to highlight the partnership as what the town did and Public Works did. So first we have town projects. It's a picture of the rock house that was built to house Susan Dwight Bliss's original rock collection. She was a rock enthusiast. So that was in disrepair, and town fixed that up, which we're grateful for. If you know Skip Hobbs, a resident geologist, he was just by today. He sorted and cleaned all the collection, so it's ready to go back in as soon as the interior work's done, which is being finalized in the upcoming weeks. The cider house, where we press apple cider and do apple cider programs, had some roof fixes, and we had some oil tanks that were needed to be removed because they were not being used anymore. Switched to propane. So those are just a few of the things the town was able to do for us. That things that got approved in last year's budget that we're still shooting for this year. The pond dredging is due. The rock house interior has a little bit more work, and that Audubon house that I showed you last year with the roof caved in, that is still standing, but they wanted to wait for a preschool break because the way the demo goes, they have to be in full suits, and they just didn't think that that was a good look with our preschool family. So we said that was fine, and so you know, we're scheduling that for one of the upcoming holiday breaks or February break. So that is still scheduled to be coming down. The greenhouse ramp. That was another thing we requested last year, and this is a before and after picture. That ramp was crumbling and was not ADA compliant, so it served no purpose. You can see the area is nice and open now. Tomorrow we have a landscape crew coming in to grass the area. We're also going to build a path through it. There's 3 memorial gardens right in that area that we want to honor and make look nice. So we've worked really hard to get those gardens going, and this ramp really getting it down really opened the area up, and so we're really excited that got down, and now we don't have to worry about the safety hazard. So thank you, Tiger and crew, and Joe Zagorensky, who did a lot of work on that. So thanks, Joe, wherever you are. Nature Center projects. We do a lot of the aesthetics and improving our classrooms. That's our #1 money maker. So we really put a lot of our money into making sure the classrooms and the grounds are well kept. We're redoing a lot of the flooring. We put in some windows because the room didn't have any ventilation, so we added that. We painted the entire middle and bottom floors of our education building, which is a lot of painting for one go. So these are the type of things we do every year, and we constantly are improving lighting and flooring and just things that make our program look and put our best foot forward. The picture of the grounds there, that's an area in between the church, First Presbyterian Church parking lot and our apple orchard. Last year with the land swap, so they could gain their area in the columbarium, and we gained area over on this side, or the Nature Center did. And that line wasn't defined. No one knew where the border was. So as soon as we found the border, then we were able to clean it up because the border wasn't known, no one took care of the buffers. It was just this mound of junk. So we cleaned all of it up. We have just did a planting, and Tiger and tree warden, thank you. They cleared out about 50 trees of heaven that were in that area. That's what the spotted lanternflies lay their eggs on. So we got rid of those, planted good native trees back in, and we solarized the whole area, which is big clear plastic sheeting. It cooks everything underneath. It's a way to kill it all without using chemicals, which is what our choice is for our grounds. We don't use any herbicides to kill anything. We do that because our preschool parents and our summer camp parents really appreciate that. So that's one of the techniques we use, and now it's all dead. We're going to plant winter rye tomorrow, and it'll just be a nice buffer, and we're going to eventually put a fence up around that parking lot, make a nice gate for First Presbyterian families. And so these are the types of things we're constantly doing to improve the property. And we work with Tiger every year basically to put what our needs are, what he has on his 10-year, of the regular scheduled maintenance, and we put out those requests. So any questions just about the last year or our budget numbers or anything like that? So I'll move into sort of our next plan. So yeah,
Just
please.
a question. What is your endowment? I didn't see it in there. Just curious how big it is.
Today, 1.8 million. So the endowment was created in the last capital campaign, started at about 800,000. and that is restricted permanently. If we dip under that, we have to actually pay it back with no interest, which is nice of ourselves to set up that rule. Anything above that, the capital gains we can use, we have a 4%, that's our own in-house policy. We can use 4% a year on any projects. We have not had to use that in recent years, which is a good sign. So yeah, anything above the 800,000 is available. We try not to touch it for, you know, the last time we really took a big chunk out was 2009. So, you know, that was a $400,000 takeout to just keep the business afloat. So hopefully we don't have to use anything like that anytime soon.
I had one quick question.
Yeah.
I went through the financials and everything was fine, but the only thing, the cover page says fiscal year 22-23. Is that just an old cover page?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for.
No,
pointing that
I
out.
just didn't want to make sure it was the right.
Yeah, that's our most,
It's a good picture. You don't have to change the cover page, just.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Thank you.
So from last year, remember I was talking about renovating the greenhouse and taking down the Audubon house. In the last year, we've done a campus strategic planning, and we're trying to assess all of our needs for all of our programs and then come to you with what we want to do with the building. So I did outline this in the memo, and so I'm going to go through this briefly, but the first one is our education building. I'm going to go to the next slide in case you don't know which building that is. The upper right, that was the original visitor center for the property, and now houses offices and 4 classrooms that are used for preschool and summer camp. When you go into that building, the picture on the left is one open area that our after school is in. The picture on the right is a 3s or 2s classroom right now. You can see those partitions that are blocking it off. It's all one open space. We would very much like to actually put up walls and segment that into real classrooms. If we could do 2 2s classrooms on the left side, 1 classroom on the right, that would solve pretty much all of our classroom needs. Reason that's so important is we wouldn't then be looking at the greenhouse as a space where we'd need to gain classrooms. So we want to solve all our classrooms in this area. Doing this would also get one of the preschool classrooms out of the visitor center. There used to be a public room at the end. With growing demand of preschool, we made that into a preschool classroom, and it's been like that for 5 years. And we'd love to get that over to the education building, consolidate the preschool, open that back up for whatever other needs and public display. So the only issue with this is an ongoing municipal code issue that Tiger and Bill first brought to me and the Nature Center maybe 3-4 years ago. I don't remember exactly the timing. They said it does not meet code for the capacity on that floor. They were looking into, there's a room past those partitions around the corner that has one small bathroom that's not ADA and one ADA bathroom. And the idea is using that room to expand out the bathrooms to get more fixtures to meet code. So that is something that we are asking that Tiger put in the Public Works budget for this year. It doesn't really make sense for us to put a big investment into making these classrooms if the bathroom issue isn't solved. So we've been talking about it recently, and that will be something that, that hopefully is in that budget. And now you have the backstory on it. But that is a building code issue. When we put in the classroom in the visitor center, there was no building code issue. The only reason we had to add a bathroom in there was for preschool licensing. So we paid for that because that was purely us changing the use of the building. This is an existing building code issue. So we're asking town to please help address. So this would solve our 2 biggest programs, preschool and summer camp. This would set us up for the future. We don't have an interest in getting much larger. We're already a very big program. So this would really set us up. So we're
You're
excited
gonna
about
come
this.
back to us during the budget season with the actual dollar request. I'm looking at Tiger. Okay. Do you have a ballpark of what that is right now?
I don't.
Okay. It's not tonight's problem.
Yeah, I mean, so this is the type of thing. Like now when that number's on there, you're like, oh yeah, we had this conversation before. So yes. Moving on to, I have prefab greenhouse written here. When we went really a deep dive into fixing our current greenhouse, so it's a growable space or actually being used for a greenhouse, the cost was astronomical. And the type of program that we want to do is a native seed harvesting and propagation program. You don't need a tropical greenhouse to do that. They're native plants. You don't need that type of structure. The only reason a greenhouse helps you is it moves the process along faster at the beginning, so that when people want to plant in May, the plants are ready. If you didn't do anything inside, they wouldn't be ready until June, and everyone's got their gardens already planted. So something like this would accelerate that process and get ready for when everyone wants to plant. But these are prefab structures that can go just outside of our herb cottage, which is that building in the upper right. And right next to it, if you look at the lower left, there used to be 4 greenhouses in that area. It was the area occupied with our herb and community gardens, which had to be remediated because volunteers found lead in them. And so those gardens went away 2 years ago. It was very sad. They were really amazing gardens that no one wanted to see go, but there was a bunch of lead that they found, so they had to go. So all the growing here would have to be not in the ground and in trays and everything, and that's what we would want to do anyway. So this really fits in that area, and this is a much more cost-effective way to achieve our growing program rather than trying to renovate the current greenhouse, and we have other plans for that. So that would solve this growing horticulture program, plus our classrooms we would solve in the education building, and then we move on to the greenhouse, and that simplifies what we want to do there, and some sort of multi-use building.
So Bill, just to
Yep.
go back,
Yep.
on that, the greenhouse.
Yeah.
So I thought we were mowing that, grassing that. Did we do that already or no? Now these are going to be the new,
Yeah, that's the area. It's
Okay.
it's still the community garden portion still needs to be grassed over.
okay,
That's something that Tiger is working on.
okay.
The rest of it, it was landscape fabric and rocked to keep all the plants down.
Mhm.
And this one grass just went through all of it.
Okay.
So at the end of this season, regardless, we're gonna mow it all down and clear it. But
And so these greenhouses would go over that space?
yeah, and just one, we're looking for one.
So then the rest of it would remain grass? You would just.
The
grass
the grass area that Tiger is going to take care of, that will remain grassed. And then there's like 4 other of these rock beds that will be plenty of space for everything we want to do.
Maybe I'll come over. and-
Yeah, come on over.
Is the lead remediated?
No, it's all covered. Yeah. So, and Tiger was, we can't plant anything in the dirt. That was the biggest takeaway from all that. And so everything we want to do is going to be all in planters and above, and it fits for what we want to do.
Are
So
there natural plants or trees that take lead out? I know there are, that's famous in Connecticut for mercury, right? Everybody knows that. You know this?
The Connecticut boy. I know, well.
Right.
you
No,
can-
there isn't, we
There
don't.
isn't anything that takes lead out. so
No,
yeah.
what we did was we capped it. So we put a fabric down over the top of it, graded the soils out to make them all level, kept everything there, nothing left to site, then put a fabric down and then put stone over the top of it. So in essence, said, you can't plant here anymore. Could do other things on it, be on top of the stone. It's absolutely no problem since we have the fabric and the stone. That's the buffer layer between the two. So we worked with Jen Eilson in the health department and had a plan with an environmental scientist. And that was the remediation. So we're okay in that regard. Just can't put a shovel in the ground. So.
What put the lead there in the first place?
Yeah. The existing greenhouses that were there prior to the town purchasing or getting the property were all painted with lead, with lead paint. So when they were removed prior to the town owning it, we don't know exactly when, the lead came down, fell off the structure and then into the ground.
there
associated with
were
it.
4 original greenhouses. The one antique one was still up about 5 years ago, was the last one that came down. I have a picture of the other 3 that were up in 1902. So, they're very old. And you have no record of when those 3 came down. So I assume they didn't do all of the necessary remediation steps for, back in whenever they took them down. So it all just
Right.
settled.
When we took the 4th one out, we had a lead health plan and we remediated it properly and disposed of it properly. The other 3, we did not. So at that point in time, anything that landed in the ground, lead doesn't leach out. So it stayed there. So what happened was a a volunteer took soil samples and had them tested, and they came back and showed that they actually had a high lead content, specifically around the walls where the greenhouse structures were. So we deemed the entire area, since it was above the threshold for human consumption, we deemed the entire area, I won't say unsafe, we deemed the area unusable for the herb garden or for a community garden, and capped the area at that point in time out of an abundance of caution.
The community gardens were all raised beds, weren't they? Yeah, that's
So they still went down, they still went down to the, below that. And as people are, especially if they're eating fruits that they're sucking things right up from the soil, that's where.
to have a plot at that community garden. I wonder if that.
So I will tell you that by far because that's not where the community garden was. There was not a greenhouse on that portion. And so the community garden had by far the lowest levels, and most of the community garden didn't actually have levels above that made it unsuitable for consumption. That's the good news. Thanks for that. Thanks.
No problem.
Just to finish off, so I don't take up any more of your time this evening, is what to do with our current greenhouse that is basically we can't use it for a growing space. We have one classroom in there that functions for our little explorers. There's also a summer camp room that can exist in the one classroom that's in the back of that. The rest of it is sort of storage, and there's a woman who grows succulents in there because it's the only plant you can grow when it gets 120 in the summer. So we think that basically taking this building down to the foundation and starting with something up from there is the best option. Renovation of this building, just given how unique it is and the problems that exist, we'd probably spend way more money trying to work with what we have there. So for all of our other program needs through our strategic planning process, a very large open space is what would serve pretty much every program we have. So preschool and summer camp, when there's inclement weather, being able to go in and have activities still in a big open space would be fantastic. When our Harvest Fest this year, which is like a beer and wine and music, we just hoped it wouldn't rain this year, and it didn't. So, but for years where we don't, we have to rent a $10,000 tent. We'd love a space where we could go in and have those events inside. When the Garden Club and the Beautification League come, they build all the wreaths there, and they do it in the greenhouse, but a big open space. There's a lot of uses for that type of building. Also, what we are trying to keep is very simple. One floor, so we don't get into elevators and that sort of thing. Basically a big open space with a couple of bathrooms and some storage. So keep it simple, and that's our plan. My hope is that next year I come back with architectural plans and a dollar amount, and really figuring out what we would ask of town. What Tiger and I we just talked about the other day was really figuring out what issues it has now. So there are some ADA issues, and figuring out what it would cost to fix up the building, and use that sort of as a starting point of what we're going to ask you. Is not picking a percentage of the building, just saying, well, here's 10 years worth of maintenance it's already lined up. Why don't we take that and put it towards the original, considering that would probably go away. If that's not a great strategy for you all, please let me know, but that's what made sense to us at the time.
When you say next year, you mean February next year, or the
year from now, this
year
time
from
I'm gonna
now,
be coming and
FY
giving these
26?
presentations.
Okay.
So that when it gets into budget season, the things that we're asking for can be in there.
Will you have the ability to at least give kind of like a placeholder for the 5-year capital plan?
So that was the other reason. I don't know how we do that for
I'm not
now,
psyched
but
about that, yeah.
picking a number, that's we're trying to get our ducks in a row so that we can do that, because you all told us that. So I don't know how to go about that process, but yes, if we can get a placeholder in, that would be fantastic. Questions about our future plans? I do want to make clear that the education building, all of the walls and the redoing the flooring, that's all going to be paid for with our own funds. What we're asking town is to address the building code issue with the bathrooms. When it comes to that greenhouse project, we're not asking town for any funds for that. We want to take care of that with our funds. When it comes to this new building, again, we want to sort of focus on what the current maintenance would be and see if the town could provide something like that.
Okay. Any questions? Anything else you wanted to cover?
Not unless you
We
have any
appreciate this.
questions.
No, it's good. It's great to keep us posted on this. This is great, actually.
Deanna, you get to hear this 2 more times. Congratulations.
Colm or
No, thank you. Thank you, Bill.
we're good? Okay, thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, update number 3, Powerhouse Theater. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Having me.
Of course.
So for those of you who I haven't met, I don't need to echo. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Patricia Spagani. I am this is just one page. Sometimes it's nice to have paper to write on. I
Isn't
know
it
you-
in the deck? Was it in the presentation?
in the
Yeah, I
deck.
don't need no copy. Then we got it.
If-
Yep, 10.
There we go. Especially when it comes to numbers. It's nicer to have it written. So again, I'm the co-president of the Town Players of New Canaan. I hope you've all been to the Powerhouse Theater, but we, the Town Players of New Canaan, have been in existence for 78 years. This is our 78th season and our 41st season at the Powerhouse Theater in Waveney Park. In 1983, the building was converted from a storage building of the original Powerhouse on the property to a 115-seat theater. And we have been running it successfully and profitably during that time. I won't say hugely profitable, but we've been running it well. And in particular, pre-COVID, through COVID, and the last several years, I'd say we've actually probably doubled the number of people that come into the theater. So what I wanted to do today, in talking with the Board of Selectmen who asked me to come and specifically talk about the improvements that we jointly want to make between the theater, the Town Players, and the town for the campus, which is really the last piece of Waveney that hasn't, from a building perspective, that hasn't been touched in a long time, 40 years. And that's what I wanted to do. So I think it's worth restating that our mission is to provide a home for live theater that enriches our community, not only New Canaan, but the broader community in Fairfield County, to create an opportunity for artistic expression and that is accessible to all. So every one of those components we take seriously. And just to give you a brief update of what we're doing this year, we're doing 6 main stage shows. So for community theater with an all volunteer board and all volunteers for actors and the production team, that's very ambitious when we look at any of the other community theaters. The ones that are maybe more familiar to you in both Ridgefield and in Stamford, by comparison, they have paid executive directors that are full-time and full-time staff. So we are all volunteers. We make this happen because we, as board members, are all really lovers of the theater and doing this in our community. Half of our board members are residents of New Canaan or have been residents in the last few years. The other half are very talented individuals who love our theater in this town and are very dedicated to making us successful. So our upcoming production is The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. So it's a family-friendly show. And we have 17 kids on stage with 5 adults for this show. It's based on a book that was very popular. Half of the kids are New Canaan kids. We're really happy about that. And that's important. It's the only show that we're doing that has kids on stage this year. Usually it's our holiday show that we do this with. And it's a blast. We have a good time. We also do education classes for adults, mostly right now, because we don't have the space. I'll talk more about that when we talk about why we want to expand what we're doing. We've done improv workshops. We have about 4,500 people a year that come through the theater. And that's pretty good we're about 80% capacity on average. We usually are light on our opening weekend and are selling out and have a waiting list by the time the third weekend comes around because it's word of mouth and it works. So we're very popular. And in addition to our plays in providing entertainment, we also believe that community involvement is important. So we work with the schools in terms of having ushers from the National Charity League, moms and daughters come to all the productions. They get to stay and see the show, which is great. We work with the Carriage Bar next door to co-host events, which has been good. We also do some rentals, which helps augment our income. About 70% of the income that we need is operating income is from our ticket sales. The rest is from donations and a few rentals. And some of you may have recalled that a few years ago, and I know this may be old news, but we did Ordinary People. And with that, we did a fundraiser that helped contribute and support the urgent assessment program with Silver Hill. So we're looking for more ways that we can give back to the community, and that's what we've been doing. So we're proud of what we're doing. We have a great time. People seem to love it. About half the folks that come into our door are New Canaan residents, and the rest come from all over the state and into New York. So it's good. It's good variety. We know that we also give back into the downtown community because people always say, where should we go to eat? They don't go to Darien, they don't go to Norwalk, they go to New Canaan. So we just need to get the restaurants to stay open a little bit later for us so that people can go out and have an after show drink. But we're working on that too. So I'm going to shift gears unless you have any questions about the Town Players of New Canaan as an organization, how we work, anything. Do you have questions about that? Otherwise, I'm going to shift gears and talk about the capital campaign and our building project. Okay, thank you. So we have had a long standing and very beneficial public-private partnership with the town. We have a lease with the town to use the Powerhouse Theater as a community theater for the last 40 years. It's been working really well. And thanks to Tiger and his team and Parks and Rec for letting us exist there. It works really well. When the town did a building assessment, and I think 2018, 2019, as you know, ADA compliance is really important to everyone. To our patrons, it's important, and to the town it is. So it really all began with the bathroom. So there's a picture of the entrance to our men's and women's room in the lobby. As I mentioned, we have 115 seats. We've got 4 fixtures, you know, as its saying goes. It works, but it's not really friendly. And my mom visited when she was 95. It was very hard with her walker getting in and out of there, but she made it work. So we know we needed to upgrade the bathrooms to ADA restrooms. So without going through all the history, we worked through multiple iterations on design between Tiger, ourselves, our architects, to come up with what we think is a really good solution. But given that it all started with the bathrooms, at the same time, we said, we can't just do bathrooms because one, in order to make this existing space work for bathrooms, we'd have 1 men's and 1 woman, which would never work. We'd wind up having to have a half-hour intermission. So we got past that, and I think where we are today, which is what I'll share with you, we have a really, really nice design, including resurrecting a proposal that was approved back in 1985, which was to add, make a new lobby over our existing patio. So if I'm going here to page 4, thank you, Tucker. While we are all good stage and scenic designers at the theater, we decided we needed to hire someone who's a professional consultant. So we're working with a company called Theater Projects. They're based in Norwalk, Connecticut. The lead designer happens to be a resident of New Canaan and brought his team with him. We had several planning sessions and basically came up with a design that we are now pursuing in, have done a lot of the architectural work for. So we've been at this for 4 years in earnest, including we'll talk about the money, I'll touch on that a little bit, including the funds that the town has already committed and what we have fundraised. We're about 1.5 million, which is $1 million more than where we were the last time we formally came and talked to you all. So I think we've made good progress. However, as time's has gone by, the cost of the project has gotten more expensive. So we are just over halfway to where we need to be. So hold that thought, we'll come back to that. So I wanted to share from a footprint perspective. I look at this as 2 basic pieces of work. One are the things that we want to do to improve our ability to support our mission at the theater. And the other pieces are the things that the town is really driving to become ADA compliant, not only for the bathrooms, but for the entire campus, so that people coming into and out of the theater have that accessibility that's needed. So you'll see in pink, nice color pink, is everything that is really driven by the theater, investments and improvements driven by the theater. And what's in blue is that which is for the town and everything that will make the campus ADA compliant. So I'll point out the things for the theater. So again, more than doubling the size of the existing lobby, which again is taking and putting a wonderful greenhouse structure over the existing patio that's there, that everybody goes out and even in the snow and to enjoy the outside during intermission. The other thing is that because of the way we need to expand the bathrooms, we'll now have bathrooms off the new lobby. So that's the ADA piece in the middle. But those are going in our existing office. So we're doing a little bit of dominoes here. So where the office is now, we'll put ADA bathrooms that'll be right off the lobby. And they'll be new. The potting shed that's currently unused and in disrepair will become our new office. And then also on the site, we have built in 1985 a storage annex, which currently holds our props and costumes. And the recommendation from the theater designers is that we take and use that space and turn that into a theater arts education center. And why is that important that we have that? One of the things that we want to do as part of our community mission is offer more education classes specifically for students in the community. And we want to do that, you know of STEM, but if you add the A in STEM, you get STEAM. So we want to add the arts component, the technology component into our education program. So it's not just for adults, but it be hands-on with kids. Given the location of the theater on the campus of the high school, adjacent to the Y, adjacent to the middle school, the fact that we have gotten, are getting increased interest in the programs that we're doing with kids, where we're bringing in a group from Greenwich currently in the summer to host our kids program, we're finding that we actually are getting increased interest. So the goal would be is that we empty the storage, and on that spot, we reconstruct this new education center. And that is really the piece de resistance, because it will just make the theater a whole nother ability to contribute to the community. All right, so the next 2 pages lay out, again, the different components and at a macro level, what the costs are. So if I look at page 6, the lobby is about 1.6 million, all in, including the bathrooms. The education center is about, we estimate it to be $1 million. And that would be to actually take down the building that's there, that was constructed for storage only, and really is at, I would say, the end of its healthy life cycle and is starting to need repairs. We would take that building down and in its place on the same footprint, put a new structure, which would look the same in terms of profile, but instead of being 4-inch walls, it would be 2x6s. And the other thing that's nice, if you can envision where the powerhouse is, over that backside overlooks the Sledding Hill and Anderson Pond. So our goal would be to have on the backside, which would be the east facing side, a wall of glass with a deck, a small deck, 10-foot wide deck that would overlook that so that we could actually make use of that space for special events as well. So that's the theater piece. And then from an ADA perspective, it's the work that would need to be done for the bathrooms. And as you may recall from the past, the town also planned to add public or park use bathrooms, which would go on the other side of what we're proposing is the education center. And those would be made available to anybody in the park by the town. What needs to go between that to make that work is a sewer line from the existing bathrooms to the new bathrooms in our office over to the public bathrooms. So it's another reason that we either are going to need to break up the foundation that's there, the pad that's the concrete pad that's there. If we have to do that anyway, it kind of all speaks to the best thing would probably be to just redo that building. All right, I'm going to go forward. Unless there's any questions about the building or the use. Okay, thank you. So I'm on page 8. One of the things that we've kind of challenged ourselves in with advice and counsel from the town is to look at this public-private partnership as a way to kind of split the costs of what we're doing. So to date, Town Players has raised towards this is $680,000 towards the project, of which most of that is really going to fund the lobby and the interior of the office, which is our responsibility to outfit, which is the potting shed, the new office in the potting shed. So this is where we are at now. We've got a gap on our side of $150,000. If we look at this as a 50-50 split, so the town has graciously over the last 18 months had approved funding $625,000, which includes funds that were allocated in the 2019 timeframe, I believe, for the ADA bathrooms, and then another $500,000 to support the lobby project. And what I'm asking is that next year in your budget for the 2026 budget to consider increasing that by $200,000, which would round us up to where we need to be while we continue to do our fundraising. So that's on the lobby, the ADA restrooms in the potting shed or office. If we look at the second piece, which is the Theater Arts Education Center, the estimate for that building complete is $1 million, including all the technology inside to do the classwork that we want to do. And we have submitted with the town a request to the state for a $500,000. Fingers crossed. We'll know in December on the status of that funds. And my request then is the town would contribute the other half so that we could go forward with the project. And then in addition, there's other work that Tiger will come talk to you about from the Department of Public Works perspective of what needs to be done on site. So I'll just pause there for any.
I have
questions.
3 questions. I'm trying to toggle between that page and the last page. So the 625 you said was funded in 2019?
No,
Okay.
no. So
I must have misunderstood you.
page 11.
Sure.
So this summarizes the town's commitments as I understand them. So the bottom one, The town budget included some funds for the ADA restrooms.
I'm just trying to connect the town funded 625.
Yep,
Is that money spent?
no. I shouldn't say, a
Yeah.
portion of it has been spent, a
Okay.
small, relatively small portion of it was spent for initial design work that was
Right.
done for the ADA restrooms that the town did before town players got involved.
So at some point it was funded through however it was funded at some point in time. So do you know how much that's been spent or not? One guess. Okay, so there's almost 600 left of that, maybe less, 575, like that. Okay, so that's funded and not spent. Then so that was that. The 200, help me with where that additional 200 is spent on page 7. How would I figure that out? 'Cause I know it says ADA restrooms, interior potting, so it's kind of 2 or 3 spots, it looks like.
Right. So if you will, there were 3 $250,000 allocations made by the town, separate from the ADA bathrooms. So one $250,000 allocation was made to specifically support the park restrooms and to renovate the potting shed. So on page 7, that's the 250,000 there. And then so Todd, ask me your question again.
So there's the 625, we've got 575 left. And
Right,
I think that's the ADA restrooms. I don't remember how much of it was interior potting sheds and everything else for that. But holding that aside, you said you were going to request 700 more.
yeah.
200 more for that area, the ADA restrooms in the area. I'm just trying to understand on the drawing, where does that 200 go?
On the lobby. It would go towards the portion that's the 1.6 million needed to complete the lobby and the ADA restrooms to support the lobby.
Okay, okay, so the box on 8 doesn't say lobby, that's okay. Oh, yes, it's theater lobby, that mean the whole, so some part of the lobby, I got you, okay. And then the other 500 says theater arts education. Is it a specific area on this?
So on the prior
the whole
page,
area?
on page 6,
Mm-hmm,
it would go specifically towards the box that's labeled the Theater Arts Education Center.
and it's just part of, that's some amount from the towns, and then some amount from 500,000 from TPNC.
Right.
Okay, just want to make sure I got
And,
what's going
and
where.
part of that is because part of the work that's going to have to be done, especially at the foundation work, is again, putting in that sewer line between the bathrooms, right? There is work that's going to have to be done anyway. Even if we didn't touch the education center, there would still be work that would need to be done to support putting in the sewer lines.
Okay, that helps.
Did you have a third question?
2019. But I think it's not 2019.
There wasn't the amount, some amount that was put aside for the ADA
Yeah,
restrooms.
okay. All right.
That has been spent.
What is
Yes.
the 575 sitting in? It was budgeted, not spent. Is that just sitting in the? I didn't mean for you to jump up again, Tiger. Sorry about that. On this day.
Sorry, so the 75,000 isn't a capital account. That was back, the reference to 2019 was we funded $125,000 towards bathrooms in the theater itself. We spent $50,000 on design towards that effort. We have about $75,000 left in a capital account that's been carried over for a couple of years. Then we had the 3 $250,000 tranches, 2 of which were ARPA
Mm-hmm.
and 1 was a bonded amount.
Mhm.
So the bonded amount is hasn't been bonded yet, but it's just sitting there as an allocation. And then the two ARPA allocations themselves. So that kind of gives you how the.
What are
three
they
were
sitting
funded.
in? Are they just sitting in this account at a Powerhouse Theater account or in your?
There are three separate accounts
Okay.
for it. In essence, two ARPA accounts and one bonded account. Not a small portion was spent on out of the one of the 250s, but other than that,
Right.
nothing.
Okay. Okay.
So the $1 million we're thinking $500,000 state grant and 500 from the town. Is there any more fundraising opportunity?
Actively continuing private fundraising. We will continue to do that because we will need additional fund. I mean, if we got the state grant and if the town contributed, we would still need the funds because we probably will get to the point where we're going to need to hire a person to run the education programs.
And I'll ask my favorite question. Do you guys have an endowment and how big is it?
That's a really good question. We don't have officially an endowment. We have that we had, when we started the capital campaign, this project, we had close to $300,000, in the bank, which was a result of us being very frugal in our productions. And we contributed about 250 of that to the capital campaign as our starting point, and then we've continued fundraising on top of that. So we're looking to keep about 150 to 200,000 outside of the capital campaign. But is it tagged as an endowment particularly? No, but that's what we've been doing. And like I said, our shows have been pretty much profitable, which has been good. So we've been able to continue to contribute.
Maybe last question of the 625, you said you thought you spent 50, Tiger. Then there's the TPC and it's funded 680. That's also not spent.
Some of it has been, the design work has been spent. We've
Things
spent
like
about
that.
$100,000 on architect and
Okay, so the
engineering
rest
fees.
is, so there's quite a bit of money ready to go.
Absolutely. Yes. And we have it invested in treasury bill, so it's all available.
Other questions? Did you have anything else you wanted
Yeah,
to?
I have a question. If we skip ahead to the ARPA table, which I know is
11.
onto yet.
Yep.
But I see parks, Waveney Park outdoor bathrooms, 250,000. And the status says close out and take balance. And then there's another town buildings, town players, 250,000 and 211,000 of that says close out and take balance, leave PO. So I'm wondering, I think that's part of the 625 that we were referring to. And what does that mean, close out and take balance?
It's down on your agenda.
Oh, sorry. You're really.
Oh, are you?
No, it's good.
Yeah, I think we're going
Good
to
idea.
two different agenda items.
Back to that one.
Well, he's asking the question now, so it's part of a later agenda item.
With the ARPA funds, you have to have it committed by December 24 and spent by December 26. If you don't think you're going to spend it, it's a problem. We'd have to give it back. So what we're doing is closing those projects down out of ARPA to take it back into the general fund, which then gives the general fund a bigger fund balance to be able to reassign those funds. Otherwise, if we kept it there and the project didn't move in time, we would lose those funds.
I see.
Yeah.
So it's still, we're still intending to spend it on the bathrooms and the playhouse, but it's just a matter of keeping the funds from going back to the federal government.
Right, and we can reimburse ourselves, so it'll just go to our fund balance and we can reassign it.
Okay, thank you.
One of the other points I think is worth making is, because we've been asked, is could we do this project in multiple phases? Could we, for example, work and complete the lobby and then do the education center at another time? Which is a reasonable question, and we've challenged ourselves 6 ways to Sunday to say, is there a way that we could do that? And because there's so much site work that needs to happen, and I'm using the word site work, it's to get the whole campus down to a level to make the accessibility and the access from the parking area work. If we were to do everything but the education center, we would run the risk of tearing up or destroying part of what we just all worked so hard to make nice and pretty and do that building later. So what we would much prefer to do is to do this as one project, and it would be more cost effective. We would basically replace a 40-year-old building with a new structure in terms of the education center. It would be much more useful for the theater and for the community at large as a useful, nice heated building that we could all enjoy, and we could develop our programs. If we could at least get that structure, the education center built, and then continue to, if we didn't have all the funds to do the interior work, but we could, in terms of outfitting it with the technology, which is probably going to be 300,000 to 400,000 of that 1 million. So if we could just at least get the building and the structure and make it a heated and air conditioned structure, then, that would be, if you will, a way to phase it. But we're either going to make the change now and change it from storage into a useful building, or not. We can't really pick it as two different projects, total projects. So I think that's worth commenting on.
I have a follow-up question on that education center. Is there some sort of expectation of charging a fee for participants or anything like that? I mean, is there like some pro forma expectation of revenues if you're going to think about bringing headcount in as well?
Maria, that's a really good question. We would have to charge students, children for doing that, for participating, but we would expect and hope and do fundraising so that if students wanted to participate but didn't have the wherewithal, that we would be able to offer scholarships, so that we would not want to ever be in the position of turning away someone. But in order to have quality instructors, educators in theater arts, I would expect those individuals as professionals to be paid, and therefore the programs would have to be self-sustaining.
Just want to clarify one thing. I don't think the ARPA question you asked is related to this. This direct those dollars, those 250?
It is.
Those 250s are the million? Okay.
They're
Right.
in a much bigger list, but yes.
Yeah.
Wait.
Question, sorry. Section 3 says TBD for 26 budget. Have an idea on timing when you'll have an amount?
That'll be, we'll be submitting our capital budget shortly. It'll be in that.
Part of it.
And also, the other two section had fundraising amounts. Do you expect to raise any funds for section 3?
I'm just saying, I don't think.
Section 3 is town, that's our requirement as far as the potting shed restoration.
Right.
And the parking lot restoration, sidewalks, patio. So from the town players' perspective, we weren't expecting them to fundraise towards that.
About the potting shed appears in section 1, and the interior is in section 1, and the exterior of the potting shed is in section 3. If you had to estimate, how much would the total potting shed renovation expenses be?
Well, I can only speak for the exterior. The exterior, we have $100,000 slated for that review, or for that work. We still have some structural analysis to do, so we feel that might go north of 100. At present, I don't know exactly how much the town players are expecting to outfit the inside of the building. We're looking at it from a landlord perspective. We're giving them a white box. They get to fill the white box. So we're strictly for the outside, the roof, the walls, the
Doors,
grading
windows,
around
floor.
side. Right. Yeah, the inside floor is gone. So, or has broken through. So that's our requirement, and then the rest to be filled by the town players. So I can't speak for their, how much their amount is. Our amount right now, we have $100,000 budgeted for it.
So, yeah, we would expect somewhere between 25 and 40,000 on the outside, but we're not going to do very much in that except electricity, wall switches. We've got furniture and shelves and whatnot, so we just need to make sure that we've got heat, air conditioning. We don't need water in there because it's not going to be used for the public per se. It'll just be used as an office. So we don't need to add a bathroom in that building, for example. The other thing that's worth mentioning is while whatever work is going on, we do plan to continue to use the theater and operate it as a theater. There is an entrance on the side of the building towards the carriage barn that has a deck there now with a wheelchair ramp. So we can use that as an accessible access. So we would work with what the town, with Tiger and whatever contractor to try to make sure that for the weekend performances that we can work around that. So that is our goal as well. So we'll be able to continue to provide the entertainment to the town and the community. So the net ask for you all to consider going into the budget cycle is to help us get to the point that we can actually do the whole campus the way that the design is worked out. We're happy to go through the plans and whatever other detail that you might want, whatever, going into the budget cycle. We welcome you all to come and get a tour of the facility so you could actually see the space. I think it makes a big difference. Please come see the Christmas show, because that's so you can get to see the theater in use. It just makes all the difference. But
Yes, sir.
So I just want to ask a question so I get something clear in my mind. I have two questions. The first is for Tiger. So of the portion that is to be funded by the town, if 825 is already approved, now, and I'll go through the numbers. One was the park restrooms and potting shed for 250. The two ARPA grants of 250 each. The 125 that was originally allocated, of which 50 is spent, leaving 75. So you add those balances together, you get 825.
Correct.
So 825 has already been voted on and previously approved. Okay, so of the town's piece, then what we're looking for is 750,000.
additional,
The town's part is $1,575,000 out of a $2.9 million project.
if we were to agree that we would do a 50-50 split,
Well,
yes.
this is, as presented by you.
Yes.
Okay. And of course, hopefully we get the state of Connecticut. And that's up in the air until December.
That's my understanding.
And so the other question, Patricia, is for you. Why is the lobby so expensive?
Why is it so expensive? Well, I have the details of the costs in here, but when we started out, we thought this would be a $900,000 project, right? Todd, do you remember that number? It was 900,000 and now it's 1.6. Part of that is because, as we know from other projects in town, doing HVAC in a public space has different requirements today than it did 4 years ago. So what was, for example, a $80,000 or $90,000 estimate came in with a preliminary from the contractor at 350,000. So we know that the costs have significantly gone up. I will say that we went through multiple iterations of the design. The first one we came up with, when we showed it to someone in the conservancy, they said, please don't build that. It looks like a 7-Eleven. So we
Wow.
want to make, could we do a simpler design? Sure. Would any of us in this room be satisfied with it? Probably not. So I think we've, through multiple iterations of design work, and I welcome your thoughts on this, Tiger, I think what we've come up with is a design that will last for the next 2 generations or more. We want this to really make this part of the park special. So I'll leave it at that.
It sounds like what you're saying is that there hasn't been that much change in the underlying design. It's the costs that have gone up.
Cost has gone up, yes.
The building is not easy in the end.
Was the potting shed in the original 900?
No, never
Potting
was,
shed was separate.
was always separate.
That's cool.
Well,
That's cool.
Yeah, that was different, but that's potting shed was always a problem, but now it's gonna function and a reasonable budget attached to it. What happens to that tower portion? The little tower in the front,
The tower?
or in the front?
That
That's between the
actually,
lobby and
that's
the
not
theater.
changing at all. That's staying there. The little, 3-sided structure that looks like the base of the wind tower that was there. That's part of the green room into the backstage of the theater. We're actually not touching the theater proper at
Oh,
all.
that's the part of the theater.
That's backstage of the theater,
Okay.
and that's not changing at all. So if you look at the floor plan, yeah, that's not changing at all.
Okay, I wasn't clear what that was from the drawing. Okay, so it's part of the theater.
The other thing I should mention that we also, since we're planning to do, since we would be giving up our storage, particularly the second floor of the annex for the costumes, we can put a ceiling over part of the existing lobby, which would give us storage adjacent to the dressing rooms on the second floor. And that's where we're going to move the costumes. So that's also part of the plan, but that's inside of the building such as it is. So we're doing that as a separate part of the project, not in this. That'll help us solve the storage problem that we will create by taking the storage out.
One last question on the additional 500 that you call out on, I think it was 8, that you're going to raise. Right, TPNC to go?
Yes.
Is that raised, partly raised, not started? Where's that? What's the status of that?
So the additional $500,000 for the education center.
Mhm.
My hope is that that is funded by the state grant.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
But meanwhile, we
We'll know
will,
that when we have this conversation in February. Yeah.
February,
Okay.
exactly, or
Where is that
sooner.
going?
If we hear
Is it
before then, you will
150,000?
know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And meanwhile, like I said earlier, we are continuing our fundraising activities, which we are in the process of going from the silent phase into a more broad community-wide.
Okay. Other questions? Colin, James?
Yeah, I actually do. I'm sort of wondering, this is directed probably towards Tiger, what the difference in cost would be to try to reuse the existing storage area as opposed to knocking it down and having a new building. I think the total cost is $1 million for that Theater Arts Education Center. If you tried to reuse the existing building, recognizing it may not be optimal, what could you do it for?
So you're suggesting the existing annex be converted to the use that the town players are looking for?
Yeah, I mean, if you were looking to try to save some money on this project, it seems to me that knocking down an existing building and replacing it is a nice thing to have, but if you could do it without having to knock down a building, Is it possible, and how much would it save by doing that?
The problem is that portion is not purpose-built towards what they're looking for it to do, right? So they're looking for it to be an educational annex. It was built as a storage facility by volunteers. So it's not necessarily built to current standards with the size of the walls, the studding and the framing of the walls themselves. And it's not, the unfortunate thing is it's not purpose-built. And then there's a change in grade between the existing lobby and the annex, which then is very problematic from an accessibility standpoint in order to get from the outside into the annex, and then from the annex to the lobby. And you wind up chewing up a lot of space just on ramping alone, whereby if we were able to take out the floor and drop the floor to the correct height. Now, mind you, we've still got to cut through that floor anyways, because we've got to put the bathroom fixtures through from the existing bathroom inside the facility to the new bathrooms outside, the ones that will be parked for park use. So we're already cutting that floor. So it's in our best interest to knock that floor and drop that floor down. We get rid of the ramping, we get rid of any problems. We try to then work our way from one portion of facility to the other, because it was not foreseen at the time. It was just basically a barn to place, their props and their needs inside that. So I can't say that there's a savings there. I think we're actually probably where the savings is in the fact of knocking it down and building a new purpose-built building versus trying to renovate the existing building to fit what the new purpose would be.
Especially if we look towards future maintenance costs.
I didn't even get that far, but yeah.
Right.
Okay, calm. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's just that it's always a moving target, it seems like, and it's gone essentially doubled since the last time we heard about it. And this is an extra $1 million. So that's why I was asking him the question.
Yep, nope, good question. Thank you. Other questions? Obviously, we're not voting on anything tonight. This is a great update and a big status change, right? So we'll know a little more in December, and we'll have we'll go through you in January in your budget and come to us in February. So.
Appreciate the opportunity again, and please do come see the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Or, if you want to come see a tour, and also happy to invite any of you to come see the building.
Yeah, we may do that
See
between
on
now and
site.
February.
Okay,
Seriously.
thank
Okay,
you.
thank you for that. I can move that. Yeah, sure. Okay, quick audible on the agenda since Scott and Bob are here. We'll move up the Riverwood update to now. We'll bump everything in down, all right? Ann? Josh, you guys are okay with it? Welcome, Bob. Great to see you. There's an empty seat right here. It's an empty seat right here.
Confident, do not listen to him.
Wait, say again?
They don't have any idea that I used to sit there for 16 years.
Who knows? Who wouldn't know that?
Oh, I remember
You
you.
do know. I certainly do. 16 years.
Yeah, he's the
Jeez, Bob.
longest serving
Oh my God.
single guy.
I feel like I've been here 16 years. It's only been 7.
Well, his was one whole.
We'll move on.
Yeah, I'll leave it at
The
that.
only thing I would ask is pull the mics a little closer, just to make sure that everyone on TV and Zoom can hear you.
Right.
Well, thank you both for all the amazing work you did and what feels like a blink of an eye. Things move faster now that Bob's not on the Board of Finance. No.
Wow.
Oh, my gosh. So let's, what's the latest and what can you share with us?
So I think a lot of the stuff is sort of been out there in the press a little bit. We did close the deal. It was far more exciting than anyone would have hoped it would be. But, as with everything through the deal, people kept stepping up, and there was things that were done that would have probably been impossible in any other community. And we've got a real special group of people that, from elected officials and charitable organizations and individual citizens and business connections, a lot of stuff really came together. And I was somewhat pleased when seeing the attorney on the last day and just telling him that I am not cut out for this. I can't handle this. This is way too much pressure. I'm really good with pressure. And he said, no, this was the most complicated deal he's ever seen in his life. And so I felt better at that point that it was like, oh, this worked out okay.
And pretty quickly, and then twists and turns and.
It was definitely exciting. And it was, so at the end of the day, we did close with Fannie. We just sub 5, and Bob can correct me if I'm off here a little bit on plus or minuses, but at least directionally, I think I'm correct. We ended up with about just under $50 million from Fannie in the credit enhanced essential housing bonds. This was, I think, like the second issue that they'd been used. LA Housing Authority was the other people. And it turned out that we're a little bit different than them, which caused some of these issues that popped up later on inside of the deal. We closed at, I think, 4.82, 4.83.
Your mortgage rate's 4.91.
4.91. And then we did 24 million of the subordinate.
075, yeah, 24075.
24075.
To be exact.
And that ended up closing at 6%. And there was a lot of sort of drama under that. And RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, was very influential in helping and cooperative in making the deal actually come together and happen. Those bonds have since been sold, which is wonderful. And with that, we have $2 million in reserves that we have set in a set aside account. That's a debt service coverage reserve. Hopefully that's the right certain acronyms that's set up in that, and that'll exist in a interest-bearing checking account. We'll take the interest from that, and we'll be able to utilize that as we need to. A bunch of which will be to sort of pay back other interest on other things, such as loan here. In addition, we used about $1.5 million of the funds that were allocated by the town in fees, and we have about $500,000 left in an operating account. And that's plus or minus. I think we'll probably actually will use 600 and we'll be down to about 400. That's taken us tighter than we would like to be right now. As a recall, Housing Authority had built up cash reserves from other operations in Canaan Parish. We threw all of those into the deal. In addition, we got our deferred developer fee from Millport, which came out of the Affordable Housing Fund. And we threw all of that into the deal. And ultimately, it sort of becomes the Housing Authority pot in order for dealing with our properties. Right now, we'll be a little bit challenged over the next couple of months in the fact that we're a little bit behind at Riverwood already. And part of that was just because the deal took so long to actually happen. Avalon lost their manager a couple of months into before we closed. And so we lost a couple of people under vacancies. We're in the process of refilling those. We're changing things over to affordable housing. But if something were to go wrong at Millport, or if it takes us a little bit longer to fill stuff up at Avalon, we'd probably get a little bit tight. So in the near future, we'll probably be coming and asking for probably just a line of credit for maybe $1 million or $1.5 million, just in case things come up. We may very well need that in order to keep the other projects together. It was interesting that I had, arbitrarily pulled $5 million out of the air when I came to you guys the last time, saying I have no idea how to use it. And it took about 2 weeks before we knew we'd end up using it. And we, of course, cut down to 4. And on the last day of the deal, we're like, oh, I wish I had 5. Oh, I wish I had 5. Turned out we didn't need it. But again, as of right now, things are fine. We're covered. Deal's moving along. But we're definitely going to be a little bit tight. Perhaps, hopefully not uncomfortably so, but just looking forward, we'll probably, again, at least set the stage that we need to be able to draw upon some extra reserves, which would, again, be in the form of a loan under the same terms that we talked about before, if at all possible. So that's sort of a general summary, and I've unfortunately told many people about this, so please ask questions and let us know what's going on.
Yeah,
And
do you want
Bob
me to give
certainly
a
has
little
more of the details.
More detail. So in this capacity, Bob Spangler, I've been a New Canaan resident since 1997, on several town boards over the years, and including this board for a long time. And in this capacity, though, I run municipal finance for RBC Capital Markets. And then if we go back far enough, I actually did this for a living in terms of structured affordable housing, and have represented New York City Housing Authority, Chicago Housing Authority, LA Housing Authority, Atlanta Housing Authority, Boston Housing Authority, basically all the major public housing authorities.
Small guys compared to us.
In the United States. And the HACLA Housing Authority of City of LA deal was people who work for me. I don't do anything. I'm in management. So I actually had people work for me to do this deal, but it was nice. And he called me, I didn't call him. but knew that this is something we could do. The hard part is that the structure was already baked by the time we were called in August. And to do a deal like this in 60 days is pretty quick. And the hard part is Fannie Mae makes it really hard to have subordinated debt. They're very restrictive in how they look at cash flow and how they operate and as a senior lender. And so that's what was unique, is that we were really struggling to try to find a way to do that, what is effectively equity, if it weren't for a tax exempt nature of funding. Because this town bought a $75 million asset for $4 million of equity. That doesn't exist in the real estate market. It does exist in municipals, and here in part because of this town and frankly my ability to communicate how this board works and how this town works and how important 830G is to this, to our community and just how we operate. So we did though. So the Fannie process works. They restrict the cash flow available for subordinated debt to 75%. So the net operating income, the NOI of your project that you bought, is $4.6 million, I want to say. After debt service is about $1.6 million that's left. The subordinated debt is about $1.2 million. So they allow you to size the amount of indebtedness, assuming you have 75% of what's left. You can use, and you have to use all 100 to pay for that debt service as a subordinated bond, but you just can't use it for debt sizing. Hopefully that makes sense. And so we had a very short period of time. The Fannie process took several weeks longer than what was originally anticipated. We had a deadline. We moved the deadline 10 days. We literally got approval from Fannie Mae on a Friday and had to close the following Friday. And in the interim, tried to sell $25 million of non-rated debt in a structure that hadn't been done before. So we didn't do that. We RBC, as I run the department, frankly, we underwrote the 25 million and just took it down. And now my limit is 25. Thank God it wasn't any more than that. And knowing that we had some decent feelers, but I wasn't really sure of the rate. So I was a little worried about that. But it turned out that we sold it at par to one of the major bond funds that's out there that everybody in this room has heard of. And they bought it at par at 6s. So it worked out great. But part of that process and part of why we're here is that there is it was made known as to why this happened. The housing authority itself didn't raise its hand and say, we want to buy an apartment complex. How might we do that? But this was part of a strategy for this town to manage 830G. And that is how we sold the subordinated debt. Not that it was a 1.0 coverage, 1.00 debt service coverage on existing NOI without inflation. That bond would not be saleable. And so it really hinged on that, on the public policy around it, not around the real estate. And so I do think it's important to know that, because your town leaders were supportive in that. There's an acknowledgement that this is why we're endeavoring to do that. As you know, it gets you 100 units. You're going to have to convert them all, of course, but it allows you to me, it's super smart. When I would praise you in absentia, because I think it's a very smart public policy to build up that inventory so that you can manage 830G in a much more proactive way. You don't have to be reactionary down the road as has occurred in the past. Anyway, that was the storyline that got these analysts on, and I had to speak to not only the real estate analysts, but the general obligation analysts as well. And so that worked, but it is important that there be support level from this body, I believe, and you all can decide what you need to do. But it just an acknowledgement that this was not him going out on his own and buying a $75 million asset because he wanted to, but that it was really part of a broader public policy decision on the part of the town and the boards to have that inventory going forward.
Excellent. Questions, thoughts? Is the sub debt, does it have amortization or is it a bullet?
So Fannie doesn't allow amortization, which is nice. So the senior bonds are interest only for 5 years and then start an amortization at year 5. It was a 10-year final. There's a call in 10 years. It's a 30-year am, but a 10-year call. And then the subordinated bonds have to be interest only for that 10-year period, but can have what they call anticipatory sinking funds. So if you base upon the 75% cash flow, there will be some amortization if available, but it's pretty modest over that period of time. And then there is a pinch point. So in the cash flows at when you start the amortization of the principal, which is only $750,000, but it's enough such that the debt service coverage, again, if there's not inflation, drops below, it goes to 1.99 on the subordinated bonds. Now there will be inflation, would be my guess, in the next 5 years, but be that as it may, it is still, these are pretty tight cash flows. It's run at a 5% economic loss, so 95% economic occupancy. Historically, it's been 97% physically occupied, but it will, it's new name, new management. Particularly if you look at AMI or SMI units in that will reduce your cash flow. And there's some provisions in there to adjust, frankly, the support level from the town if that were to, to pass. So all the documents are well written. That's the complication aspect of it, and it should work fine. But any sort of economic hiccup could create some problems.
And what is occupancy now?
We're still north of 90%, but not hugely north of 90. And again, a bunch of that just deals with the transition, and we do. It's I mean we're in the market. Unfortunately, the Thanksgiving to New Year's is not the best time in order to go ahead and lease things. But of course, we are pushing to do that. We'll hopefully get it, the stuff right back up. We also were hurt by the full cone of silence around this until the end. And some people had, it was very uncomfortable at our hearing when I just got to sit there and listen to people about what are they going to do? Where are they going to move? Where are they going to live? And you're like, you don't need to move. You don't have to do that, but you couldn't say anything. And that I'm sure cost us a couple of tenants also.
Well, as a AAA town, we obviously have to stand behind this and not scare anybody. So.
Well, I'm listening to some of the housing authority conference calls. People are already interested in moving into the project. We've had people into our offices asking when can they get in, so.
Our best realtor.
I'm calling Scott, I'm like, you need to. So.
Sounds like it's going to go well.
So if this was an 830 G play, how long will this property keep us under the moratorium?
Well, so last night at the Affordable Housing Commission meeting, Sarah was there and Sarah Carey was there also, and we had gone over some of the numbers. We need 30 more Hue points for our next moratorium. And that 30 translates into roughly 1.5 Hue points for each 80% SMI unit that you have. So again, the play today, Avalon does nothing for our 830G because we don't need an 830G moratorium. Sometime in 2027, we'll start looking out there and we'll see how many units have we produced, how many are in there. Obviously, if a major project happens, like some on the boards, we might not need any. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully we will need some. And in that case, we'll be able to convert over 10 to 15, maybe 20 units from AMI to SMI. That will require.
Say what those stand for. I think everybody knows, but just.
AMI being the area median income. We had to convert 21, or we're in the process of converting 21 of the units today into 80% AMI, which is, and this is wrong, but it's directionally correct. Call it $1,000 a month off of what the market rent is for most of the apartments. Going to SMI, which is state median income, gets us 830G qualified, but that ends up being likely an additional up to $2,000 per unit off of the rents. And so we'll end up having to, doing some of the backwards math, somewhere between $300,000 to $600,000 per unit to convert each of those units. Now, as the income goes up, as some other stuff comes down, we'll be building some cash, hopefully inside of the project. We might have some money available, but as we look as a town, we likely should go ahead and start planning, putting some money aside and starting the budget for 2028. So at least we're not coming off of a zero in order to make sure that we can get a moratorium.
And it's 4 years per moratorium.
Correct.
The rules could change, for heaven's sakes. But and
Victor, real quickly. So then as a rule of thumb, and this is just a rule of thumb, we in theory, we can convert every single unit at Avalon into 80% or 60% SMI. We can do whatever we want with them. That being said, to convert the entire project in one lump sum would be a pretty piece of money. I mean, it would cost a lot in order to do that. Under a sort of rule of thumb, people have found that basically, if you're going to maintain a high quality market rate project combined with affordable housing, somewhere in the 60-40 range. So a 60 market, 40% affordable is something that's worked in general. That's not a hard and fast rule. We can do more, we can do less. So in theory, we could get another 20 some odd, 20 to 30 units from Riverwood to contribute toward the next moratorium in 2032. But as we remind people, Riverwood is not a solution. It buys us time. It allows us to be more deliberative, but we have to do something more by 2032. And, as just an aside, the state may change all of the rules anyway and make it all irrelevant or make it, more onerous or less onerous. So play that by ear.
And what drove the initial 80% AMI? Is that a Fannie?
So under tax exempt ruling, you have to have 20% of the units at 80% of area median income, which is Stanford, Norwalk median income.
Thank you.
And just to be clear on that area median income, that still counts toward our 10% affordable number. It just can't be used towards a moratorium. You have to be at SMI in order to qualify your units.
Correct.
Yeah. And Victor, just because Scott and I have had this conversation, it really is a decision by the various boards over time, because, Avalon could take us a long way. It's, as a community, how much do we want to fund into that project? Because at a certain point over the 60-40, it doesn't make, but we as a community might say, where is this where we want to put money to limit density and have housing where we want it and all that kind of stuff. So, it's but it's a long-term discussion to have.
Rick Redness was at the meeting last night, and he actually had sort of a statistic that as you convert from all market to 60-40, your market rents will drop by somewhere around 10%, which is not too bad. But as you get down to 40-60, 20-30, your market rents go much more than like a 10% drop. They start getting much more severe. And so that, again, just becomes that equation that we have to look at as to what makes the most sense.
Well, I think, Bob, as
you
you
have
said,
8 years embedded right now,
Right.
which is really nice for you, from a planning standpoint.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add, I mean, as you said, it becomes a public policy approach to an issue that we can manage thoughtfully in compliance with the rules and what we have to work with. And so I applaud the unbelievable work you did, Scott, and everybody else. I know it's a team.
Lots of
And
support.
Bob, I mean, I can't say enough. It was heroic to provide not only the access, but the guidance and the thoughtfulness and the appreciation for the town and bringing all that together. I know how hard that is over those 35 days that you really, or 50 days that you're really driving at. So
We're going to miss our
Grateful.
Sunday afternoon phone calls
Yeah.
and, Saturday morning ones. So,
budget starts in February, just saying.
yeah.
Other questions for Scott and Bob?
Well, thank you all for your efforts and staying on this board.
And again, the amount of support from everybody across all the community was tremendous. It would not have been possible without it. So thank you guys too.
I drive by the parking lot of the Bank of America near Watch Hill, where I had 3 conference calls with you, because it was the only spot you could really get decent cell service for an extended period of time. And every time I drive by there, I think, that was a great vacation. Thanks, Scott. Okay, we'll wrap it up. Thank you. Yeah, thanks very much. All right, back to the top. ARPA.
We've touched on this topic already in terms of, we have approximately about $1 million that we're looking to commit back as a reimbursement to the general fund for revenues lost. In doing that, we wanted to make sure that projects we originally committed, we believe that they won't be done in time. So we want to make sure that those funds come back and do it as a reimbursement to the general fund. And at a future point, then we'd be able to reassign those funds for the purposes of what they were in a special project fund. So right now, we're looking for the approval to bring these funds back into the general fund.
So the sum is 1,02,629.34. And if I'm not mistaken, we almost have to do this, right? We're under
Yeah,
a
because
time frame now
it's the
where,
time
and we
frame.
can, and these were the lost revenues. It's really part of this agreement or the rules and guidelines we
Yeah.
received. So this is all compliant. Thanks for that. Okay.
And we've communicated to everybody that's on this list that, I mean, they'll have to come back through the boards, but that, this list exists now. Everyone knows what
Right,
it is.
right,
And,
right. Yep.
So.
So just thinking out loud with you, 6 months from now, if we wanted to apply $18,000 to the backup emergency generator sitting in our general fund, that's just a special appropriation or would be part of the budget or however we would.
We could actually assign it and put it into a special projects fund, because if we leave it in the general fund by June of next year, it rolls up to the fund balance and then you got to do a budget appropriation.
okay.
Or we could choose to transfer.
Choose it
it
to
a
something else.
special.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Good. I think it's great. It gives us great flexibility to use it how we'd like. Okay. Questions? James, Maria? I think y'all saw the spreadsheet.
Why would the federal government say, we want to take back the funds if you haven't started the project, but if you move it back into the general fund, we won't touch them?
It's the one.
Back as reimbursement for revenues lost. So it goes into our general fund.
Oh, so you're
So
telling
now
me-
it's our bucket to, if we want to reassign our general fund somewhere.
I
So this
see.
is a pure reimbursement to us for revenues lost.
I get it.
By the way, this will be much easier on all the internal people once those projects actually start, right? Yeah. So.
We'll just repurpose it. Okay.
Yeah.
And we have, we can justify $1 million of lost revenue, and I assume.
Yes, between our parking,
Uh-huh.
the various ones that shut down, definitely
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? We need a motion to approve recommendation for I'll read it.
No, but this is for this?
Thank you for this. No, here.
Yeah, we're still up there. We're
Yeah.
not doing that.
No, yeah.
No, that's the only one that has to be read in here. You need to have a motion to move the $1 million.
All right.
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Maria. Second?
I'll second.
All right, jumped you. All in favor? Aye, opposed, none? Thank you all. Okay, I think Josh and Ann, we do the financial update, line transfers, and then the debt service fund, right? Okay. Great. Thanks for the write-up.
Of course.
Like it.
So the write-up that you have is really just kind of like a summary of the highlights that are on here, but I'll go through them one by one. So you have in front of you the year-to-date financials as of October 31st. So about 4 months in. Overall revenue are at 54.6%, led of course by tax collections, which are also at 54%. Prior year tax collections also at 54%, and it'd be great if it just went down like that. But building permits are 35% of what was budgeted, which is about 11,000 under last year, but still on pace for the 850,000 budget for this year. Conveyance fees also doing well at 45% of the 1.5 million, up from last year by about almost 30,000. Parking revenue is at 73% overall. There's been about 1,000 permits that have been sold, with 100 more that are on the wait list. So 640,000 of the 876,000 budgeted. Meters are also doing well in parking, and tickets are at about 50% of what was budgeted.
So it's running way over last year,
It is, yeah.
year over year, right? We had 200,000, now we have 600,000, right? Apples to apples.
Yep, for sure.
Okay.
Interest on investments are at 41% of the 2 million, 255,000 over last year at this point. So that's doing nicely. Tipping is at 30.
I'm sorry, just on that, just notice everybody, our budget cases was the same. It was very close to, right? Do we have a few that went up and down? What was our budget last year for that, for interest? Wasn't it $1.5 million?
It was something like that, yeah. Tipping is also doing well compared to last year. It's at 37% of what was budgeted, which is about 55,000 over last year's budget. Considering it's a relatively small number, that's pretty big. Other is at about 80%. A lot of that is transfers into the general fund, but the top two are really the unrealized gain is about 380,000, and the state property rebate is at about 100,000, I think, over what was budgeted. We kind of budget what the governor's budget tells us to, and they give us more money, and that's kind of makes up that difference. Any questions on the revenue side? On the expenditure side, we are at 28%, slightly ahead of last year where we were at this point, but expected to be on budget, of course, with no really major issues that are currently ongoing.
Well, what are you saying about the Board of Ed? Is it running a little hot?
I mean, I guess a little bit compared to last year, but I think that's expected with just the higher overall budget.
Okay. Well, this is October, so we're through 33% of the year and we've spent 28% of the money. So one way to look at it.
Yeah, but
I mean, it's never exactly, obviously that way.
Kind of has a catch-up period at the end, I think.
Yep. Okay.
So if there are no questions, I'll just move on to.
Any questions? Any of that?
No,
Chris?
no, it's fine.
Okay.
So there are about a dozen transfers just to review, totaling $23,055.60. No real standouts here, just kind of administrative transfers. And did you want to?
There's also another sheet that we included this year. It's never really been included previously, but at the end of the year, when we go to prepare our AFR, we do a budget transfer between all the lines. Certainly the ones that we have a lot of savings in some, not a lot of savings. If we have savings in some of those lines, we bring them to zero and bring that net difference to the contingency line. So you can see on the contingency line of how much savings net we had for the year. We do that from a perspective of when we do schedules for the AFR. It's our SRR 1 and 2, which shows line by line budgeting on this. And this is a cleanup for that table. Most of the ones you'll see where it says a debit and credit on that. Some of these are payroll related because we don't budget for OT. For a lot of things, we don't budget the storms and that we don't know what it is because they will go over. And also we have to do day counts at the end of the year to do accruals back for the what gets paid into the next subsequent year. So you have some adjustments. So we make those budget adjustments at the very end of the audit. So because we bring all our transfers and budget, I felt we really should bring this at the end of every year to you as well. I don't know if it's ever been, but I think it's something we should. So you just see that entry. Great.
Thank you.
You're just aware of it.
They move from one area to, I mean, it's a lot of.
Yeah, what we do is we literally just take what the actuals are, what the revised budgets, and the difference is we just clean them down and we put it all together into, if you look at the very last page, you'll see the contingency. That's the catch-all where the
I was
net
going to say,
number
where
goes.
does it foot out? So it's
Yes, yes.
contingency.
It foots out down to where we put the contingency line. So we put
Okay.
the savings in there.
So maybe the question would be, is there anything there, lessons learned or otherwise, if you have a couple of years of that data that we need to do differently with the budgeting?
It's something we're looking at
Okay,
for sure.
yeah.
Yep.
So the 2 million, that goes to kind of the general account, is that what? How does that?
That would be our budget adjustment that would flow up as savings to the fund balance.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's a D, but that's actually a. no,
It's a budget transfer, so
liberal
it's, yeah,
article.
it's
So
opposite the
actually-
accounting
it's a
side of it, yeah.
positive, not a-
Yeah. It's a positive.
Thank you. I think that's actually good transparency.
Great. I just wondered with all that change, is there something that we could think about?
No, you're never going to get it right.
Never gonna get, it's never gonna be perfect and, you know,
Every one of those would,
Yeah.
it's just trying to make them smaller.
yeah.
Unless they're positive.
The net of it is it's been positive significantly every year, but just, yeah, okay.
Remember, that particular year, the biggest, some of the biggest parts of the change is, we didn't bond in that particular year. So we did have an automatic 650 something in savings alone just on that line. But you're right, it's something we are looking at.
Anything else? No.
That's it.
Okay. Want to talk about the debt service fund?
So in following up to the conversation about the loan to the housing authority, I'm looking to set up a debt service, a fund all by itself to
The amount we approved in our last meeting. Yeah, okay, just want to make sure everybody's clear on that.
million. So to identify that 4 million and flow it through the debt service fund, because it's going
Sorry,
to.
do we have any to approve or just review? I thought it was just review the, yeah,
Reviews.
just-
Okay.
tonight was
Yeah.
just an approve. Yep, no, sorry.
You want to technically review that the larger list, we could do that if you wanted.
No, the question, do we have to vote on any transfers? It was in the agenda to approve, but I don't think we had it to approve. It's okay.
So there's a lot of pieces in that, in the loan that we're doing, because we will bond for that loan to pay ourselves back. So to set up a debt service fund, I can put the proceeds, the cash has already gone out the door, can bond, put the proceeds back in that fund, repay ourselves, and then set up the debt service so that when I bond next year, I'll identify out that piece that belongs to that $4 million. And that debt service will reside in the principal payment, interest payments will all happen in that fund and not affect the general fund from any budgetary perspective or cash. It'll make it back whole. And then from that point, everything will go through there. The monthly interest payments, up until the point of when they do the debt service payments, the principal and interest, and also the interest we're getting on the loan will all flow through there. And then at some point, whenever we get I believe it's a balloon payment, we'll probably get in 10 years.
Oh, so we'll receive funds into that account as well from the interest. Okay.
Yes.
Makes sense to keep it separate.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea, I think.
Be highlighted by itself and have no effect on the general fund.
Kind of a good idea.
And the funds that go in there come from where?
I bond for the 4 million.
And rent it.
Sorry?
When you get a premium on it.
When we actually get the funds when I go out to bond to market next February,
Oh, you run the principal back through.
the principal will go in there. Yeah. And then I'll put the debt payments against there as well.
All right.
So I'm looking for approval to set
And
that
and will the
fund up.
cash flows from the property also run through there? I mean, effectively.
Just the interest on the loan.
Loan interest that we will
Housing authority.
earn.
Yeah, yeah,
The
they-
housing
they have all
authority,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is just purely the debt and
Got it. Housing
and the
authority.
loan,
Yep.
the asset itself.
Only for the housing authority? Is this purely for, is
This
only-
will, right now,
only
the
for the
debt
housing
service.
authority?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
So this is directly related
To what we
to
approved.
this Riverwood.
Yes.
Good idea.
It versus the difference how we did the library.
So it doesn't have to do with all of it doesn't apply to all of our debt.
No, just the portion that will be that 4 million.
Okay. Understood. Okay.
I think it's a great idea.
Seems like a good idea
I'd
to keep
forward
it.
or I'd move it.
Yeah, because it's complicated
Separate,
enough that
yeah.
segregates it.
Yeah.
Good idea.
No.
Otherwise, you're gonna have it all over the balance.
James,
sheet.
any questions or Maria? Column for Ann on this?
No, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Nick? You good? You, Victor? Okay. Okay,
Do we have to approve this?
we do. We need a motion to approve. Robert, second?
Second.
Second, Chris, all in favor? All right, opposed, none? Very good. Thanks, Ann. And do we have to approve this? Is
Yes.
this the resolution for the 4 million?
Yeah,
Okay,
this
yeah.
is that.
All right, okay. Well, now that we have a fund to put it in.
please.
I think you need to read this.
Yeah, I need to read this
Chris,
one
for
in too.
this record. Thank you.
Okay. Approval of the following project appropriation bond authorization. Resolution authorizing an appropriation of $4 million for the New Canaan Housing Authority Loan 2024 project and the financing of said appropriation by the issuance of general obligation bonds of the town and notes in anticipation of such bonds in an amount not to exceed $4 million. Have a motion?
Motion? We need motion? Somebody would like to make a
I mean,
motion?
I'm always a mover. so I'm
Victor,
always gonna
thank
let
you.
Somebody else move.
You got a second?
I'll second.
Call him second. Excellent, thank you. All in favor or approval? Aye. Opposed, none? Okay, so moved. And just one question for you while you're here. Are we done with the audit? What's the status of the audit? It's part of the financial update, so it's not a new agenda item. Tucker's nervous over there. It's part of the financial update. It's legit. question.
We're looking to have a draft by this week
Okay.
to finance department.
Okay.
PKF has been great getting it, moving it very quickly, considering some of the reports that that came later for us with the change in the pension plan. Then from that point, we build our MD&A. We have to go through and do the MD&A on our side once we get it. So I'm hoping to send it out to not hoping, I will be sending it out to the audit committee next week by email.
Okay.
And we'll start doing the back and forth on any comments,
Okay.
anything changes they have. So it'll be in front of.
Aren't you normally done by December anyway, or?
We will be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll have a motion to adjourn. Thanks, everyone. Motion? Bob, second, Maria, all in favor? Aye, opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Good meeting. A lot of updates this week. Nice.